Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Black Peer Perspective. Today, my colleagues Drew and Ian and myself are going to be discussing the reality versus the perceptions of peer specialists. Now, in our field, sometimes people have a misunderstanding of the work that we do and like what our actual job description is and what goes into the work that we do. This episode is going to talk a little bit about the differences in those things and kind of like clear that up for anyone who might be having misconceptions. So, we are going to start this episode off by talking about what we thought the job was going to entail and what the job of a peer specialist was going to be and how it differed from the reality of the work. So, I'm going to put that out on the table if either of you guys feel like answering that first. But what did you guys originally think that the job was going to be, taking on this work of a peer specialist? And did what you think it was going to be differ from the reality of the work?
I think with that, for me, me thinking it was going to be a walk in the park because I figured, the main thing that I looked at was the lived experiences. Oh, I have lived experiences. It's going to be a walk in the park, and then, getting into the work, excited first day. Okay, it's not that bad. So, getting into the conformity of how things are ran around there, it kind of had to adjust, doing the work, but also trying to stay within the guidelines of what's what. I think the most challenging part for me probably would have been keeping up with the notes. I enjoyed meeting everybody doing this. I'm working 3 different programs. I meet with this person, this person, and then reality sets in, you still got to do these notes. So me not disciplining myself to that adjustment of doing the notes or whatnot, and me falling into the passion of really engaging with the people that I'm working with.
Right.
That's the only dislike I have within this, but I understand, so either I can get with the program or walk away.
Mm-hmm. I haven't done peer specialist work in a few months, and I almost completely forgot about the fact that we had to do notes, and that was definitely like eye-opening for me as well. Because like we're not in the role of a therapist, so the fact that you are expected to keep notes and to write notes and like share those out with the rest of the team was a little bit jarring, because it's like, why do I have to do that? Like, I'm not performing a paid like fee for service kind of thing, but still I'm expected to keep notes on like the interaction and stuff like that. So like, thank you for bringing that back up, because I almost completely forgot we had to do that. That was not my favorite part either.
Yeah, same. I hated notes. No, but for me, I thought it was the fact that you were going to walk into the building and they'd be like, oh, this is the peer specialist. Their job makes sense. Like we know we want the peer and everything. And then it's like, what's a peer?
Mm-hmm.
And like why would I send my clients to go talk to you? You're not a therapist.
Yeah.
And it's like you thought you were gonna have trouble with the people that you saw, but it ends up also being the staff as well that may not respect your position.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good point there. Yeah.
I think my understanding of the job too was very much like you bring your lived experience into it and like you form these relationships. And I don't know if you guys got like formal training, but when my organization got the grant to have On Track, be a part of the clinic, we got trained from the entire On Track group. And so I listened to everyone else's job description. I understood everyone else's job description. And then when it came time to give or to receive training on like what a peer specialist is and what a peer specialist does, I think, like, again, like you were saying, like there is still a lack of respect, because like you go through all these other positions where it's like these people have like school backgrounds and like degrees and stuff like that. And we have varying levels of educational background, but we come with lived experience. And so for us, I know for me, that was exciting. Like I get to bring just like my most authentic self into work. But like the reality of that is that there's also kind of a line that you have to like find between being that person and still like finding a way to have people respect you. Because like we go through our shit, right? Like I definitely struggled as a peer specialist, especially working during the pandemic, having to move to virtual. So most of the participants I was meeting with, it was happening online. And then like all of the stuff that was happening during the pandemic with like racial injustices and stuff like that, me showing up as my most authentic self is me coming into our staff meeting and saying like, I am not doing great and I'm struggling. And the reality of that is like, it's so different to do that with your participants and then to do that with your team members, because like, there's still this feeling of like, I don't want these people like diagnosing me in their heads. I don't want these people like questioning the integrity of the work that I'm doing because I myself am struggling. And so like, that's not a super major difference from what I thought it was going to be, but it definitely was an eye-opening experience.
Yeah, like when your boss says, you can tell me anything. It's like, can I really tell you everything? Can I really? Yeah.
So this ain't what you want. Stop
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also think I was really lucky because like one of the biggest things that got stressed was you're going to have supervision, and that is the time to talk about things that you need and the support that you need from your supervisor, your team leader. But also it's not a therapy session. And my supervisor never gave me therapy, so to speak, but she also was very much like, you can talk to me, you can tell me. And she did try to support me and also kept that balance of like, I am still your boss. This is still not therapy, but I am here to support you. What can I do to do that, to make sure you are your best self for our participants and for yourself? Like I could tell that my supervisor cared about me very much, whereas like in the peer world, that is not always the case. And outside of the two of you, I've met a lot of other peer specialists while working at On Track. And I think that that's not always the case, which is kind of what our next question was going to be about, which is what has the reality of our role done to affect our other interactions? So right now we're talking about like our interactions with other team members and with participants, even within our organizations. So I want to just ask you guys, like, your role as a peer specialist, do you feel like it helped drive forward the work that you did with your participants? Do you feel that being your most authentic self like was the most helpful way to get your job done with your participants? And like, how did that differ from the work that you did with your team members or even within your organizations? Because we all come from different, places.
So the work that I was doing, no doubt about it, always put my best foot forward, when it comes to my participants. When it came to the team members, it was more so I couldn't be 100% authentic because there was room for them to walk over me, like be discounted or overlooked, or my opinion be devalued. So I had to put on a representation of, I don't know, my represented self had to step up. I couldn't be authentic. I had to play what they're doing. Or when they discuss a certain participant, hey, I am a peer, right? I had to give them that reminder that I'm sitting here, which for me let me know that they don't really value, but I couldn't take it personal, I guess, because that was opportunity for me to bring peer perspective to a positive light in the mix, after a while, I just really became authentic, but with an extra niche, like Yeah, I hear voices, like in groups when the participants are there.
Mm-hmm.
I know they're not going to check the participants, so it allows me to be more authentic. You know, me being vulnerable opens up the door to everybody else being vulnerable in that group.
Mm-hmm.
You know, with my team members there or not, I'm able to do that. You know, so I guess finding the right ground to actually be authentic all the way around compared to adjusting or adapting to the program of what these PhDs, associates, so on and so forth.
Yeah. For me, I got hospitalized while I was working, and the whole how it played out was very not accommodating. Like my job was not understanding at all. I just needed time for myself to be okay while I was dealing with what I was dealing with. But when I was trying to still contact work about being being understanding about my situation, they weren't. So when I came back, it was like, oh, like this is a business. They're not really here for my well-being. They just want me to get the job done. Mm-hmm. So that kind of like changed the way that I perceived the whole organization, but not necessarily the people that I was working with, but just the company as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So yeah, it wasn't a good feeling. It wasn't because I when I was doing my training, it sounded like I would be hired in places where they would understand, you know, mm-hmm. they would accommodate you, but it wasn't like that where I was. So that kind of changed my whole perception of the job.
That's fucking trash, and I'm sorry to hear that that was your experience. Yeah. I very much like from the beginning of doing the work of a peer specialist had this like repeating question in my head of how are you expecting people who have lived experience, who are more than likely still in some form of recovery or another, expected to just go, and there's no support from, like you said, the larger organizations sometimes, because they are looking for productivity, they're looking for us to be at work, they're looking for us to get the job done, as you said, but like peer specialists are still humans and we still have shit that we need to deal with, and more times than not, we are not full-time staff. So I'm not using the little bit of hours that I am getting from this for fun just because I don't want to. Like there is something going on that I need to take care of and I need support in. And it's just trash that doesn't happen on an organizational level.
Yeah.
And to Ian's point earlier, I was going to say that it is definitely like a balancing act because we are the only ones on the team who kind of have to do this like split where like I can be vulnerable and authentic with my participants, and then around my team, maybe I have to be a little bit more guarded. And I like the fact that you said that when you would run your groups, that's when you allowed yourself to be your most vulnerable, regardless of who was there. Because I know when I ran groups, there's always a therapist in the room with me, because they are the ones who get paid, you know, for that service. We don't get paid for it. We get our regular little hourly monies or whatever. But that's also such an interesting place to see a therapist be and have them see us. Like you are a therapist to our participants and you are my coworker. And in me running this group as a person with lived experience and like knowing the kind of support that I can give, you are seeing me in a way that most of the other staff don't get to see me. And I think that that's really valuable. I know the therapist, the clinician I worked with, she was amazing. And like, she would always be like, oh my God, Maya, I can't believe, you know, like you've been through all of these things I wouldn't have known if I didn't do group with you. And it's just like, well, yeah, the rest of the team doesn't get to know those things about us because our work is to be done with the participants. And for me, that also drove the way that I with my team members because I did want them to get to know me. So I was like, we should have like more, not staff meetings, but we should have like staff hangouts. Like, and granted, we were living through a pandemic, so we had to do it virtually, but like we need to connect more as people. And this was my challenge to the organization of, we're going to do this thing for us to build a better rapport, to build a better relationship amongst our team members. And it ended up working. Like I did get a chance to get to know my team members. I asked very specific questions about their mental health. I had started a YouTube where I interviewed all of them, and we talked about like their experiences of mental health. How do they take care of themselves? Have they ever like seen mental health struggles or diagnoses in any of their loved ones? And like they all opened up about it. And it was so good to do that because the organization didn't have it in their heads for us to do that, but we made that happen. And I think that's the most special thing about being a peer. Like there are so many challenges that we get thrown our way, and we just get to decide like, how am I going to deal with them, and how am I going to challenge this so that it can be better for us.
Yeah.
Well said.
Yeah.
Thank you. So we had interactions with our team members, right? We had interactions with our participants who were receiving services from our programs. And we also had interactions with other peer specialists. That's how we met. That's how I met a lot of my other peer specialist friends. And a lot of times, like I kind of said earlier, I would hear about how other people in other organizations or on other teams struggled with certain things. And a lot of these things were misconceptions that they were coming back and telling me like, oh, you know, I'm having a really hard time. And one of the clinicians brushed it off as, well, your job is not hard. You just have to be their friend. And I had really started to wonder what have been misconceptions that other people have heard or have been told directly or indirectly about the work of a peer specialist. And that's kind of the point of this episode, is to talk about like, we do very specific stuff, and those things take very specific, they cost us a certain amount of emotional currency. And so I just wanted to ask you guys if you have ever heard any misconceptions about the work of a peer, whether somebody told you what your job is, like they know better than you, or if you've heard from other people who had struggled with that in their own team.
I think the unspoken one is that our job is not important. They may not say it to your face, but they just move with a way like, my clients don't need to see you. And I think on another misconception is that we may not be perfect, but we can get a lot done. Like the flexibility of a peer is limitless. Like we can do it all, but we also need our own like checks and balances. But we have a big role on the team. Yeah.
And I agree with that, Drew. You know, we're the elephant in the room in the sense, like kind of like, oh, we don't matter type of thing. You know, oh, why my clients got to come see you type of thing. Yeah, you know, on the bigger spectrum, peer support in general, to a certain extent, is still looked at as cheap labor. You know, in a sense, you know, and like I went to, was it the Niagara's conference, or I went to one of the, I think it was the peer board or whatnot. One of their forums, their groups was, you know, how can we better put peer support together? You know, because right now we're looked at as cheap labor and whatnot. And for us to be looked at as cheap labor, I think that's kind of foul, you know, because we're like, we're dealing with other people's life challenges with the risk of opening up our own wounds to help somebody else reach their goal.
Mm-hmm.
You know, even the fight right now, you know, to get better pay for peer supports and whatnot. Like, think about the work that we do. We actually, why do they got peer support? Man, I don't. I'm not speaking politically correct in this moment, but what is peer support really? You know, we're the ones that can actually get under that surface of an issue. You know, a therapist is fine, not knocking a therapist, a clinician, whatever, all them upper ups, you know. Peer support, we're literally taking a piece of ourselves to give to somebody else to help patch them up, to help wound them in their recovery. You know, rather we're helping somebody navigate DSS or helping somebody navigate the criminal justice system, somebody navigate the shelters, whatever. You know what I mean? We're taking a piece of ourselves that we probably would say is somewhat patched or on its healing process or whatever to help somebody else, you know. Anyway, yeah, that's what I heard pretty much. You know, they call this cheap labor. And, you know, when I think about that, I'm like, damn, you know, that's it's not fair.
Yeah.
You know, we holding a big part of what's going on nowadays. We may be new or just getting recognized, you know, but the reality of it, you know, we're doing some big boy shit without PhDs and shit, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah. No, I agree 1,000%. And I think that there's definitely room in future episodes to talk about more, like to talk more in depth about the cost of being a peer, right? And like what it actually takes out of us, what the job actually asks of us, whether it's explicitly or implicitly, because you bring your lived experience, you bring your struggles, you bring your feelings and your thoughts and your reality into the work. I think there's room for in future episodes to talk about vicarious trauma, like you were just saying, Ian, like you are opening yourself up to things that we have either healed from or are still healing from, or maybe haven't even started doing the work to heal from, and it's being replayed or discussed from other people, which makes us think about our own shit, like how can we not? So I definitely look forward to making future episodes specifically about those things, and I appreciate you guys for bringing them up now in this moment, while we are talking about misconceptions that we have heard. I, again, have been fortunate enough to have worked with a team that was very understanding and very open-minded. But other people felt very comfortable opening up to me about misconceptions that they've heard, which, like I said earlier, one of them was that, oh, you're just a friend, like, how hard can it be to connect with people? When like the reality of it is it's very hard to connect with people because you have to meet people where they are. And if they're not ready to connect with you, then they're not ready to do that. But then some people on other teams also feel like, well, even though they're not connecting with you, you still need to try. You still need to pick up the phone and call them and set up times to meet with them. And it's like, which one is it? Because like, we were not supposed to be forcing people into this. This is an optional service. Like within our On Track, it is optional for a person to be part of peer support or to opt out. Like that is their choice. We can tell them what it is. We can tell them what we do. We can give them a little synopsis of like the stuff that we've gone through that drives the work that we do and why we want to offer peer support. But if they don't want to pick up their phone the next time we call, then they're not going to. And I think that has been a misconception where people are just like, well, you can still connect, or you can still make it happen, or you're not trying hard enough, or you're not doing enough to make it happen. When some of the teams have not been supportive. I knew a peer specialist who was new to her team. Her team had been in place for longer than a year. And so there were a lot of participants, but the team wasn't necessarily being supportive by getting her connected with people. Like my team leader, anytime she met a new participant that was like admitted to our program, she also set up a time for them to meet with me. So it was easier than like, all right, you're gonna get a phone call from a peer specialist, pick up or don't pick up. No, she helped by saying like, this is what this person does. Can you give them a few minutes? But not all teams are like that. Some teams just feel like you'll figure it out. You got it. You
That's
can do
how that's how my team was, where like they wouldn't set an appointment. Hey, John just came to the program, why don't you give him a call? I think since I've been with my team whatnot, that was something I kept pushing for, allowing us to be part of it in the beginning of the intake. Because it may be 5 people on the team and not dropping the name of the program, but 5 people on the team. Well, for my team, it was 3 clinicians, practitioner, and a job specialist, and me, but I don't know.
Yeah. It sucks. It sucks when people's misconceptions come out, and especially when they do it in a way that's malicious and belittling. Like, I think some people think that we should be happy to even have a job. Like, oh, you have a mental health diagnosis? Like, some people will see those things as disabilities, and it's like, oh, you're able to work and you should be glad to be here. And that has been the attitude that has been given to other people. Again, I have been blessed enough to not have that experience, and I don't think I would have taken that very well anyway, because I am very quick to question people's perception of things. Like, why do you think like I'm not able to work? Why should I be grateful to have a job despite having a mental health diagnosis? Like, one thing does not negate the other. Just because I have a diagnosis doesn't mean that I can be a fully functioning person. I don't have to be grateful to be here. I am grateful to be here, but not for the reasons that you are making me feel like I should be. And that sucks too. Or when people think like, how can you do your job when you have a mental health diagnosis? And it's like, by doing my job, I be here, I take care of myself, I try to get the support that I can, and like, I'm here. But these perceptions and misconceptions can just be so dangerous to the person who is doing peer work, because there are people who do still have questions about their abilities, and then when you have people kind of like reinforcing that by saying like, you're lucky to be here, or when they bring up like how this is new or like newly recognized and we didn't see the value of this before and now we're starting to see it, it's just like, well, I'm glad you can admit that you're seeing it, but like, wow, gee, thanks for telling me you didn't see the value in it before. Like, fuck y'all.
I didn't know you have the potential.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, go ahead.
I'm sorry, you finished? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, go.
One of the other misperceptions, right? This is with everything, but just with the peer support work I'm speaking on, that you need a high school diploma or GED to do the work. And I'm only saying that because I know somebody that's in the field that don't have a high school diploma, that don't have a GED, but still getting the work done. However he got the job, but he's getting the work done or whatnot. He's not all that school smart. That's not his thing, but he know what he likes to do. He's very good at this, And I know it's scandalized to say you need a high school diploma or GED, and that's probably it's crazy. But he's a good guy, and I just wanted to point that out. I bring that up at every conference, about somebody that can do the work but just struggled in the school aspect of life.
I think what you guys talk about is crazy, is like interesting, because I'm hearing all this about what everything that Maya just mentioned. Imagine being a person of color, a Black person dealing with this, as well as being a peer. They would say the same thing. You should be happy to be here, right? Like, and all these other, like, it's just like on another level of like, oh, we have a person of color working here with all these white clinicians and they have a mental illness. Like, what are they doing here?
Yeah, it's crazy. And I also think that there is on the converse side of what you just said, Ian, I think there's a lot of surprise too when people like aspire to be more than a peer specialist. Like a lot of peer specialists that I know also want to someday become clinicians because they want to take their experience of therapy and kind of like make it transformative for other people. And so sometimes there's a surprise around like, oh, you're in school, like you're going for your bachelor's, you're going for your master's, you have a degree, you have an associate's, like you didn't just stop at your high school diploma. And it's just like, no, we have a mental health diagnosis. That does not mean that we cannot aspire to be more than what we are at the moment that you have met us and that we are working in with you. And that's one that I have witnessed, and it was surprising to just be like, why would you think I'm not capable of doing that? But I think people do think like, you're here. You can be here and be safe. And like peer specialist work to an extent is safe. But there are also, unfortunately, like glass ceilings. Like there's the so high you can go within the peer specialist world. And like people want to break that shit. I'm not trying to stay in this one position forever. Fuck you for thinking that I did and I didn't want more for myself. And for the people who want to stay in peer specialist work, that's fine too. But when there are people who want to be clinicians or are using this as the next step to their career, like that should be fucking okay. That shouldn't be something that's like, oh my goodness, what? You with your mental health struggles? And yes,
Yeah.
yes.
I think it's important to have peer training because I think if I got the job right off the bat with no training, just like I would feel like they might be right that, oh, I should be happy or grateful just to have this job. But when I was getting the training, it not only showed me so much about the mental health field, but also a lot about people who are dealing with what we deal with, because they can still aspire to be great.
Mm-hmm.
They can, you know what I mean? Like we're taught a lot. Well, I was taught a lot in my training about, you know, you're still a person with worthwhile dreams and you can still live the life that you want to live. And that's why I really see, when I see other patients, I see that they can also live a life that they want to live, and they shouldn't be defined by what they're dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes. I appreciate you sharing that. And I also, you called them patients just now. You guys are participants. We don't see you guys as patients because we are not doctors. We are peers. Sometimes the language though does get a little difficult because you work in such a clinical
Setting.
environment. Yes,
Yeah.
and other people use these terms, and then sometimes it gets like imprinted in our brains, but like at the core of our work we never stop being peers. And so like with everything that we just discussed, I know that we gave the audience so much to take away and so much to think about and so much to kind of like challenge their thinking on when it comes to peers and the peer specialist role. But just as like closing remarks, do you guys have anything that you would want people to know about the reality of the work that we do? Very specifically, what is the takeaway that you want people to walk away with from this video?
People
For
need to
me, oh, go ahead, Drew.
People need to take care of themselves. You're going to go into the work thinking that you're going to love it, every part of it, but the reality is this does come with stress. I mean the takeaways that you get will be amazing and everything, but also there may be bad days that you have to prepare for. So, you know, get the people that you need to talk to, do what you need to do to make you feel better. But yeah, just take care of yourself.
And with me, I would say, so there's this acronym, I think I'm saying it right, this acronym that I use from a 12-step program called HOW: honesty, open mind, and willingness. You know, being honest about who you are. You know, open-minded in a sense of embracing everybody's perspective, and willingness to actually learn, you know, and adjust as needed. but willingness to always be yourself.
Okay. In addition to what my colleagues have just shared, I think for anyone who is watching this video who may be in peer work or may be thinking about going into peer work, I think that just keeping the fact that there is a reality to the work that we do, and there's also going to be people's perceptions of the work that we do. And I hope that you just keep in mind that our reality is always going to be individualized. We are going to experience things very differently from the way other people do, regardless of a mental health diagnosis or not. I recently heard this saying that there is no one world. There are only 6 billion perceptions of it, or 6 billion experiences of it. And so with that being said, like, our reality might be very different from the one that somebody else is living in. And people might not always understand, but just know to expect that, because that's always going to be the case, whether it's in peer work or in your friendships or in your romantic relationships, in your family relationships. There's always going to be a difference of perception amongst whatever topic it is or whatever it is that you're dealing with. But I would encourage everyone to not let that stop the work, but let that drive the work, and continue to challenge your own realities, continue to challenge your own perceptions, and then feel comfortable challenging other people's, because so much of the work that we do helps other people to like think about things in a different way, go about things in a different way, take things from one level to the next level and become their better self, whether they are a participant or whether they are a team member, or whether there's somebody in our organization who could think about the work that we as peers do. So that would be my takeaway. And also just keep in mind that peers are humans, your team members are humans, the people that we serve are humans. It's okay to have different perceptions as long as we are doing no harm. And if somebody is doing harm, to just kind of be like, hey, that's harmful language or that's harmful behavior. How about we think about it in this way? And yeah, just keep doing the work that we do and you do to just make this world a better place. And that would be my closing remark. And that's the thing that I want people to walk away from this video with.
Great.
So thank you all so much for joining in on another episode of the Black Peer Perspective. And we will see you guys soon.
Thank you.